The prairie was merciless that summer, dry wind sweeping across miles of cracked soil, the sky stretched tight and pitiless above. Jack Turner, a weathered cowboy with hands calloused from decades of rope and rifle, rode along the edge of the canyon searching for stray cattle when he heard it, a faint cry, muffled, desperate, almost swallowed by the wind. He stopped his horse, squinting against the sun, and that's when he saw the burlap sack half buried in the dust near a clump of sagebrush. It looked like trash at first, something discarded by passing travelers. But then it moved. Jack leapt off his horse, his boots sinking into the powdery soil. When he untied the rough rope around the sack's neck, the smell of sweat, blood, and despair filled the air. Inside was a girl, barely breathing, her skin pale beneath a layer of dirt. Her hair clung to her face, her lips cracked, her wrists raw from bindings. Jack froze, his mind reeling. She wasn't more than 18. Someone had left her there to die. The desert was already claiming her, the sun baking her through the thin cloth. He lifted her gently, whispering, "You're all right now, miss. I got you." But the girl's eyes fluttered open only for a second, wide, dark, terrified. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse sound came out, a broken whisper that didn't form words. Jack carried her to his horse, wrapping her in his coat despite the heat. As he rode back toward his ranch, his thoughts churned like a storm. Who would abandon someone like this? Out here, death came slow and cruel. Whoever did it must have wanted her gone for good. By the time he reached home, the girl had passed out cold. Jack's daughter, Lily, just 8 years old, came running from the porch when she saw him. "Papa, who's that?" she cried, eyes wide. Jack dismounted, carefully laying the limp girl on the ground. "Someone who needs help," he said. His daughter knelt beside the stranger, brushing the tangled hair from her face, and froze. Something in the girl's features, even under all the dirt and pain, made Lily's breath catch. "Papa," she whispered, trembling. "She looks like Mama." Jack's stomach dropped. He hadn't heard that name spoken in years, not since his wife vanished into the desert when Lily was a baby. He'd searched for months, scoured the mesas and canyons, but she was gone without a trace. He'd finally told himself she'd died, though her body was never found. And now here was this broken, near-dead stranger, looking so much like her that it hurt to breathe. "Lily," he said softly, forcing a smile. "Your mama's gone, remember?" But the girl shook her head, tears welling up. "No, Papa," she whispered. "She's Mama." The words sent a shiver through him. He looked closer at the stranger's face, the curve of her jaw, the faint scar beneath her left eye, the same one his wife had from a childhood accident. His heart began to pound. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. He carried her inside, laid her on the bed that had been empty for years, and sat beside her until nightfall. As the oil lamp flickered, Jack saw the faint rise and fall of her chest, the slow return of life. Her fingers twitched, and a single tear slid down her cheek. When she finally opened her eyes again, she looked straight at him, and whispered, "Jack." His blood ran cold. He hadn't told her his name. The girl, no, the woman, slept through the night, her breathing shallow but steady. Jack sat by her side, the old clock ticking like a heartbeat in the silence. When dawn broke, he poured himself a cup of coffee with trembling hands, staring out the window. The desert beyond seemed endless, empty, but now it felt alive, like it had given something back he wasn't ready to face. Lily tiptoed into the room, clutching her stuffed doll. "Papa," she whispered, "is she going to wake up?" Jack nodded slowly. "I think so, sweetheart." Lily hesitated. "Can I sit with her?" He nodded again, and the little girl climbed onto the edge of the bed, studying the woman's face as if memorizing it. "She smells like Mama," Lily said softly. When the woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering open, her gaze met Lily's, and something ancient, something maternal, sparked in her eyes. "You're so big," she breathed weakly, her voice like cracked glass. "My baby girl." Jack's hand tightened around the mug until it nearly cracked. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman's eyes moved to him, and for a heartbeat, he saw everything: recognition, sorrow, love, guilt. "It's me, Jack," she whispered. "It's Clara." He dropped the cup. The coffee splashed across the floor, but he didn't even notice. "That's not possible," he said hoarsely. "Clara's dead." She shook her head faintly. "I wanted you to believe that," she said. "I had to. They would have killed you both if I stayed." Her voice broke. "The men who came that night, they weren't thieves. They were bounty hunters, paid to find me." Jack felt like the ground was tilting beneath him. Find you, why? Clara's gaze flickered toward Lily, then back to him. Because of who I really am, she said. Before I met you, I wasn't just some traveler. I was the daughter of a Mackin they called the Iron Baron. He ran everything west of the canyon. But I left. I ran from that life, from his cruelty. I thought I was free until they found me again. Jack felt his heart twist. So they took you. She nodded, tears slipping silently down her face. They wanted me to return, to marry one of his men and seal their power. When I refused, they punished me. They beat me, tied me in that sack, and left me to die. But before I lost consciousness, I heard one of them say they'd go after the man who took me from him. Her eyes met his, full of pain. That was you. Jack couldn't speak. The years of wondering, of cursing fate, of burying grief, it all came flooding back like wildfire. He dropped to his knees beside the bed, clutching her hand. I would have gone through hell to find you, he said. You didn't have to protect me. Clara smiled weakly. I knew if I left a trace, they'd follow. I thought disappearing would keep you and Lily safe. Her gaze softened on her daughter. But she found me anyway. Lily touched her mother's hand gently. Mama, she whispered, you came back. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Jack saw something break open inside his wife, a warmth, a love that shone through the pain. But deep in his gut, he knew peace wouldn't last. If Clara had escaped them, it meant someone out there was still looking. And they wouldn't stop until the job was finished. By nightfall, the sky turned bruised purple, the air thick with the smell of coming rain. Jack had barred every door and window, loaded the rifle, and set extra logs in the fire. Clara, though still weak, insisted on sitting up. They'll come, she said quietly. Men like them don't leave things unfinished. Lily slept upstairs, unaware of the storm waiting beyond the horizon. Jack sat beside Clara, his hand resting over hers. If they come, he said grimly, they won't leave this place alive. But Clara shook her head. No blood, she whispered. No more violence. That's all my father ever knew. I don't want our daughter growing up in that shadow. Her voice was tired but resolute. Promise me, Jack, if anything happens, take Lily and run. He opened his mouth to argue, but a sound outside stopped him cold, the crunch of boots in gravel. Then another, and another. Jack moved to the window, the firelight casting his shadow long across the wall. 3 riders emerged from the darkness, torches flickering in their hands. He could see the mark on their coats, his wife's father's sigil, a circle crossed by an iron nail. They had found her. Stay inside, Jack said, grabbing his rifle. But Clara's voice stopped him. Jack, she said, her tone trembling, let me face them. It has to end tonight. Before he could answer, the door burst open. The men stepped in, guns drawn, faces hard and cold. The leader smirked when he saw Clara. Well, look what the wind dug up. The Iron Baron's lost little girl. Clara rose slowly, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Tell my father, she said evenly, that I died once already. He doesn't own me anymore. The man's grin faltered. You think we'll just walk away? But before he could move, lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening crash of thunder. The storm broke open, rain slamming against the windows. In the flash of light, Jack stepped forward, his rifle steady. You heard her, he said. Leave. For a tense moment, no one breathed. Then the leader spat on the floor and backed away, his men following. She ain't worth dying for, he muttered. Let her rot with her cowboy. They vanished into the storm. When the door shut, Clara collapsed into Jack's arms, sobbing with relief. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. Jack held her close, the sound of rain washing the blood and fear away. Upstairs, Lily stirred in her sleep and murmured, Mama. By morning, the storm had passed. The land smelled clean, reborn. Clara stood on the porch, wrapped in Jack's coat, the rising sun painting her hair gold. Lily ran into her arms, laughing. Jack watched them, his heart swelling with a peace he thought he'd never know again. The desert had taken so much from him, but that day, it had given him back everything. And from then on, when the wind howled through the canyon, it didn't sound lonely anymore. It sounded like home. Clara slept for nearly 2 days, her body fighting its way back from death's edge. Jack hardly left her side, except to fetch water or check the fences. Each time he came back, he half expected her to be gone again, as if she were some mirage the desert had sent to torment him. But she was still there, breathing softly beneath the patchwork quilt, her face no longer ghost pale but alive with color returning. Lily refused to leave the room either. She sat cross-legged on the floor, whispering to her doll, sneaking glances at the sleeping woman who looked so much like her lost mother. Every so often, she'd whisper, "Mama, wake up," her voice tiny, but filled with faith that could bend the world. Late one evening, when the sun dipped behind the ridges and painted the sky crimson, Clara stirred. Her lips parted, and a fragile sound escaped, half sigh, half word. Jack leaned in, heart pounding. Her eyelids fluttered, and she looked straight at him with dazed confusion. "Jack," she breathed, her voice thin as thread. He froze. It wasn't just that she knew his name, it was how she said it. Soft, familiar, the way she used to when they lay under the stars years ago, when she still wore the ring he'd carved her from a horseshoe nail. Jack's throat tightened. Clara, the name felt foreign on his tongue after so many years. The woman blinked, tears welling as her gaze drifted toward Lily. "Our girl," she whispered. "She's so big." Her hand trembled as she reached out, and Lily didn't hesitate. She scrambled up onto the bed, clutching her mother's hand with both of hers. "I told Papa you were Mama," she said proudly, as if she'd solved a great mystery. Clara smiled weakly, tears streaking down her dirty cheeks. "My brave little Lily," she whispered, kissing the child's forehead. "You remembered me." Jack stepped back, running a hand through his hair. His mind swirled between disbelief and hope, anger and love. He wanted to demand answers, to shout, to hold her, to ask where she had been and why she'd left him to bury her memory in the dust. Instead, he poured her a cup of water and said softly, "Drink." She obeyed, her hands shaking, the cup trembling against her lips. When she finished, she looked at him with haunted eyes. "I didn't mean to leave you," she whispered. "They took me." "Who?" Jack's voice was low, dangerous. Clara hesitated, glancing toward the window as though afraid someone might hear. "My father's men," she said finally. "I never told you who I really was, Jack. I didn't want you to know. But I was born into something dark, a family that owned half this land, built on blood and power. My father, the Iron Baron, controlled everything west of the canyon. I ran from him, from that life. I thought if I disappeared, he'd stop looking." Jack's jaw clenched. "You think I'd have cared who your father was?" Clara shook her head. "You don't understand. He doesn't forgive. When I refused to marry the man he chose, he called me a traitor. He said I'd shamed his name. When I found you, I thought I'd escaped. I thought I was free." Her voice trembled. "But the night they came, I saw the fire from the window. They weren't bandits, Jack, they were his men. They dragged me out while you slept, tied me up, and told me you'd die if I called your name." Lily pressed closer to her mother, tears forming in her eyes. "Did they hurt you, Mama?" Clara swallowed hard. "Yes, sweetheart, but I kept thinking of you, of your face, your tiny hands. That's what kept me alive." She turned to Jack again. "They tried to make me return to him, to live under his command. When I refused, they decided I was no longer worth anything." Her voice broke. "They threw me into the desert to die." Jack's fists clenched at his sides. The firelight flickered across his face, carving deep lines of rage and sorrow. "I'll kill him," he said quietly. "I'll kill every man who touched you." But Clara shook her head weakly, grabbing his hand. "No, don't become him. That's what he wants, the cycle to keep spinning. Promise me, Jack, promise you won't let Lily grow up in that hatred." He looked into her eyes, saw the same fire that had once drawn him in, the strength of a woman who'd defied everything for love. "I promise," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Outside, the wind howled across the plains, rattling the shutters like ghostly fingers. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the three of them bound together again by fate, fear, and something unbreakable. But deep in Jack's chest, a cold certainty took root. If the Iron Baron's men had left Clara to die, they would soon learn she wasn't dead. And when they did, they'd come looking. That night, Jack stood on the porch, staring out into the endless dark. Lightning flickered far on the horizon, the promise of a storm rolling in. He touched the rifle at his hip, then looked back through the window at his wife and daughter, silhouetted in the lamplight. Clara was alive, but the desert, he knew, never gave without taking something back. And when the thunder rumbled low and distant, Jack Turner whispered to himself, "If they come again, I'll be ready."